fellow shop members. So once again, we're going to work on our hanging wall cabinet. So I just want to kind of recap what we did last week. Last week, we rabbited both of the sides, okay? And we put stopped dados on our top and our bottom to let in our sides so we could fit the two sides and the top and bottom and the middle of the shelf together, okay? So that's pretty much a summary of what we did last week. So this week, we are going to glue up our case. But before we glue up our case, we're going to do one more routing procedure here. So I have to consider what I'm going to do for the back of this piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rabbit in 3/8 of an inch in depth this way and this way, so I can set a 3/8 inch thick panel in the back so I can have a back of my case. So I'm going to take this apart, and then we're going to rabbit the 4 pieces, and then we're going to fit the shelf to the rabbit to make sure that the shelf is not too wide. And then once we do that, we'll reassemble everything. So we know we have a good fit for glue right now. So then we're going to glue up our assembly. And then that should take us to about the 40-minute mark. And then we're going to start making parts for the face frame. And we're going to rough out the parts for the face frame and start our lap joints for the face frame, of which we're going to install the face frame all the way around here. So once this is glued up, we're going to have an inch wide frame all the way around here that we can mount the door in for the hanging cabinet. Okay, so without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. We're gonna sand these parts also before we glue them up.
Doug, I usually do what you're doing only when I'm mad at a project.
Well, it shows a good solid joint is what this shows.
Sure does. Nice tight fit.
Well, that's because my material is a little thicker than 3/4 of an inch. So I'm gonna wait and take these off when I sand. So what I've done ahead of time is I've set up my router. And again, we're gonna use the electric router for expediency. But I am gonna show you how to do it with the rabbit plane if you wanted to do this by hand. So, that won't happen again. Okay, so I preset my router depth of 3/8 of an inch, and I have preset my width 3/8 of an inch. So I measured depth here, inset here, so I know I'm going to have an even 3/8 of an inch dado as I go all the way around. Not dado, rabbit, excuse me. So I've got that set up. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to rabbit the top and bottom. So basically I'm going to come through here and I'm going to make a 3/8 inch cut there, and it's going to then be flush with my stop dados here. So that will give me a 3/8 inch inset that I could set my panel into, my back panel into, when the whole case is assembled. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
Hey, Doug, what size is your panel going to be? How thick is that going to be?
That is going to be, great question. That is going to be 3/8 of an inch thick. And that will mean that it will be flush with the 3/8 rabbit that we're making now. And what I've done to do that is I've set my fence I've set my fence from the flush surface of the fence to the outer edge of the bit. And then in my depth, I've set my bit down 3/8 of an inch is how I got that 3/8 by 3/8 rabbit. So I'll turn this on real quick and we'll start milling up here.
Hey, Doug.
Doug, aye.
I wasn't on time last week, and so I didn't
Okay.
actually see you cut those dado slots. And I'm just
Stop
curious,
dados.
did you do that? Did you do that with your little trim router there as well?
I used 3 of them with a trim router, and 1 of them we started with the rabbit plane or the router plane, and
Okay.
I went ahead and finished the router plane one off screen.
So is that how you got the ends to be square? Was using either a chisel or the router plane?
Chisel. So
Chisel.
after, because the router is a round bit,
Right.
I went up to the edge of where I needed to stop for the width of my side panel,
Yep.
and then I took my chisel and just squared the ends.
Got it. So
Squared
you
this
only.
end here.
So it was really the far reach of your router bit that went the full length, and then you had the radius that you had to actually get out with your chisel.
That's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep, yep. So you can see that I've now got an even rabbit that's flush with my, that's going to be flush with my side panels, and that's going to allow the panel to fit flush against everything here. And you'll see that more once we glue up the case. Then that was the bottom, and then we'll knock out the top real quick here, and then we'll lay out the sides. And again, this is critical because this is joinery that we need to think about ahead of time before we do any glue ups. Okay, so now we have the mirror. Now we're going to do the 2 sides. Now, before I took this apart, I made sure to measure or lay out, mark what side I want to rabbit so I don't rabbit the wrong side. Very easy to get mixed up when you have a piece like this with a through dado in it.
Did you really do that, or are you just telling us you did that?
I really did that.
Okay.
Because I tell you this from experience because I have been the one to rabbit the wrong side. Okay, so the voice of reason will tell you that learn from my mistakes so you don't make the same.
Will do.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start here again. Okay. So you can see I went back and was very careful on the edge. I kind of left it to the end because what I don't want to do is I don't want to dive off the corner and round this over. So when you get to the edges, you need to be very careful because only one side of your guide that you use to get your straight cut here is going to be engaged. So it doesn't take a lot for that to dive off around a corner and round off your corner, which is what you don't want. Then you would end up having to create a new side. Okay. So what if I wanted to do this by hand? Okay. Again, here's the side that I want to rabbit. I'm just going to kind of lay it out, but I'm not going to do it because we have a lot to cover tonight. Mark and gauge. So if I was going to do the rabbit, I would take my marking gauge, which is 3/8 of an inch from here to the cutter wheel. So that would be my layout line for my rabbit. So I would lay this out like this. And what that is doing is it's scoring the fibers of the wood to give me a good starting point for my cut.
And Doug, isn't the result also you'll just end up with less visible or no visible blowout because the surface fibers are already cut?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. So I'm going to clamp this down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp that right to the edge. I'm using a fence to start with. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp this fence right up against the line that I'm going to score. What that does for me is it allows me to make a straight cut to start with when I go in with my router, with my rabbit plane.
Doug,
Yes.
about the router. On my router, I have a bunch of speeds on there.
Okay.
And I have no idea what the speeds are for. I understand that if the wood is hard, you use a faster speed as opposed to a softer wood. Do you know what that is?
So a lot of it depends on, great question, Ron. A lot of it depends on the type of wood that you're using and the size of the bit. So on a larger bit, you kind of want to slow things down. I have 6 speeds on my little trim router, and the cut that I just made was on speed 2. Okay, because I don't want a lot of tear out involved in the whole thing. So what I've got is I've got a fence. Where's my rabbit? My rabbit. Excuse me for a second. I got to run over to my plane station. Where's my rabbit plane? Covered up by my pieces. So I'm going to use a rabbit plane, okay? And I'm going to face this edge against my fence, and that is going to give me a good reference for when I want to start my rabbit here.
Hey, Doug, why did you change tools for cutting this?
Cutting, instead of using a hand router.
Yeah.
So a lot of people like to use hand tools. I'm a fan of hand tools. They're quieter, you have more control. But so whenever I get a chance during this cabinet build, I like to try to demonstrate a portion of a hand tool of how I would do it with strictly hand tools versus all power tools.
It's interchangeable. You just simply switched
Exactly.
from one to the other. There's no reason to have used it.
No.
And there's no reason to do the first one with a trim router. You could have done a.
I could have done the whole thing with the rabbit plane itself.
Got it.
It would have just taken 3 times as long.
I don't know about that.
Doug doesn't want to hear that, Jim.
Once you become comfortable with hand tools, I could do dovetails just as fast as you could set up your dovetail jig. So once you practice and become proficient. So
You did choose that example, though.
I did. So you can see we've already started our rabbit here, and it only took me 6 or 8 strokes to go ahead and get down that far. You know, in 20 strokes, I'd be down flush to here for the surface that I needed to be. But that was just a demo of how you could use a rabbit plane to go ahead and do a lot of the work that we're doing. Because we have so much work to do tonight, I'm going to go ahead and finish this up with the trim router.
Hey, Doug, can I ask you a question about that?
Absolutely.
Router plane?
Yes, sir.
You have that dado slot in the middle, and you look as though you did the rabbit cut only on 1/2
That is
of
true.
the board. How did you do that with your rabbit plane when you would run up against the other half of the board?
So you would come from both directions. So great question, Travis. So one of the things on any plane really is you like to come from both directions. So if I was going to do this by itself, I would come from this direction here, and then I would come back and I would start with where the dado is, and I would come from this direction, and I would, because what that prevents is tear out. Okay. So on one of the things you have to worry about on a plane is, especially on this really soft pine that's really fibrous, you have to worry about tear out. So if I come from both sides, okay, I'm going to minimize my tear out by having the cut meet in the middle of this joint right here.
Yeah, it was really the question about from that side, though, the half of the board closest to you was still at the full thickness.
Yes.
So how do you get onto the half you were doing the cutting?
I would just start here in the middle where the dado is, and I would come and start this way, cut halfway, and then come on this side and cut halfway until my cuts meet. Now, then you say, well, how do I know it's level? You can get it really close with the rabbit plane, and then I would use my other hand tool, my router plane. So then I could take my router plane and I could go along and I could even the thickness out whatever inconsistencies that my rabbit plane had left.
Okay. Good, thank you.
Yep. Okay, make sure we're tight here. Okay. So it's always good that once you think you have your final cut done, is to go back and take a couple of passes and make sure your fence is flush against your reference side. That way, you know you have an even rabbet all the way across. Okay. I am going to get rid of this router because we're done with that part now. Put that away tomorrow. And now we're actually ready to sand before we go ahead and do our glue up. So I'm just going to go a little bit on sanding. The reason I sand the inside of the faces now is because I can't really get good access to them after the carcass is glued up. So I'm going to go ahead and that's not going to work. I'm going to write it here because I'm going to sand that. Actually, a better way to do it is inside the rabbet,
Yeah.
because then I could sand all sides and still see what part this is. You knew that, right, Travis?
Actually, that one I did know. That's the first
Yeah,
time
right?
today, though. Feel very proud.
I can't hear you. Okay, that was the bottom, and this is the top. So again, all I'm going to really do today is I'm just going to quickly sand the insides of the case before we start our glue up. I got my trusty Festool dust collector and sander here, so this won't take but a minute. Okay, so I use 120 grit to go ahead and get a fairly smooth surface on the inside. And now I have my 5 parts and I'm ready to glue up. However, I have a dilemma here. I have actually changed the dimensions of my shelf. So what I need to do now is I need to reinstall my shelf, make it flush. Show you here. I'm going to need to make this flush with my back rabbet. So when my back panel fits in, it fits up flush against the shelf.
Hey,
So
Doug,
yes,
was the shelf originally the same width as the side?
it was. So
Okay.
we milled them all three at the same width.
Got it.
So I'm going to need to take this to the bandsaw real quick and just take just that much off.
It's just the 3/8 of an inch again, right?
A 3/8 of an inch.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm glad you're paying attention, Travis.
Trying to
I'm
make up for
impressed.
last week.
I'm impressed. So bear with me here a minute. I'm going to sneak up on this cut. I don't want to make it too big. Come back, do a test fit. And see that I'm close enough right here. Actually, that's dead on right there. So I'm even back here and I'm even up here. Now my shelf is going to be the right width of my side to allow my panels to recess in the case after the glue up is made. So now we're going to go ahead and do a quick glue up.
Hey, Doug, that back panel, is that going to be like an MDF, or do you have
Oh, no.
actual wood, or what are you using?
Yeah, we're going to make this out of pine.
Pine.
So we're going to resaw. Great question, Travis. Thank you. So we're going to take, this is my practice piece for my dado. So on the back panel, we're going to take half the thickness of this right here.
Yeah.
We're going to resaw this just like this right here. We're going to resaw it. We're going to plane it down, and it's going to be maybe a short 3/8, maybe a strong 5/16 when we're done. We're going to glue these two together, do a butt joint, and then that will be the back panel
Got
to
it.
inset into the back of the case.
Doug, do you really have a bandsaw with a resaw blade on it in your home shop?
Meet Big Bertha, my 17-inch resaw. I love it.
Wow.
Big Bertha can handle it. Okay, so gonna do a little bit of glue here.
I just
What
realized, Doug, that some people may not be familiar with the resaw process. I know we just talked about it, but
What happened? Okay, are we good? My producer here is freaking out sometimes. So I'm going to put glue, and my dado is here. My stop dados on both sides, and then I'll put the side in, and then I'll put the shelf in. Again, because these joints are so tight, I don't need a whole lot of glue. I don't need tight bond 3 because I don't need a lot of open time. So on this particular application, tight bond 1 is fine. You can get the jar that I have here. I got this at Rockler for $3.75, and that'll last you a long time. Many different applications.
hey, Doug, when you were cutting those dado slots last week, was that width the same width as your router bit, or did you do, as we do in CNC sometimes, smaller bits doing multiple passes to get the full width?
Great question. So I actually have a 3/4 inch bit.
Okay,
So I went ahead and did it all in one pass.
got it. Okay, great.
However, my material is maybe 20 thousandths over.
Oh, so that's why the tight fit.
That, yes.
I got it.
Yep. So I'm going to go ahead and put glue in for my shelf here.
Yeah, you're really kind of dependent on properly dimensioned wood when you buy it then, huh? You're going to deal with the,
So a lot of wood comes 13/16 in thickness,
yeah.
but now you have to make sure that you orient this right. So I need to go like this. So you can see that's a fairly good press fit. Okay, and I'm going to come and do the same for this side. And I put a block over this so I don't swell out the wood. So when I put the top on, it's got a mushroom top. It's better to do it this way.
What's the set time on this glue?
You know, you can go back about 45 minutes after you put it in. You could go back and do sanding or other joinery.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to make sure that this is all the way forward. Just not, I need to get that just a little tap.
You're making sure everything is flush in those slots?
Yes. So you can see now I'm going to go through making sure it's even as it goes down.
That shelf is going nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm flush there. So do you think I really need a clamp?
No.
Probably not. However, I am going to put a clamp over this front to make sure that this draws in flush right here. So there you go. We now have a glued up carcass with a good rabbet in the back, of which we'll get the glue out here after it dries a little bit. Then we can go ahead and take care of this little bit of squeeze out. But we're going to leave that and let it set until next week. But what we are going to do next is we're going to start laying out our parts for our face frame. So going back to our drawing,
Doug,
I.
before you leave, it's Dallas.
Okay,
How do you know that's square and not racked?
good question. Can you see my square?
Yep.
Okay,
Okay. I'm square there. I'm square there. I'm squaring the shelf, and I'm squaring the bottom. So I have no gap. Thanks for reminding me, Dallas. Thank you.
And Doug, if it hadn't been square, would it have been simply a matter of forcing it square?
So that's where you use the clamps. So let's say it was not square this way, and it was doing this.
Okay.
So then I would come and put a clamp here, and I would draw it, the clamp, from here to this side to draw it back this way
Yep.
into the direction of where I needed to make it square. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yep.
Great question, Dallas and Travis. Thank you for keeping me on task.
Doug, you said that was a fairly good fit. What is a good fit?
A good fit is a fit that you can mate the two parts together. I really shouldn't have had to use as much force as I did. Ideally, it would have been great to take the thickness sander and take about 20 thousandths off of the fit. So you don't want it to rattle in the joint. You want the fit to press in with hand pressure, and not have a gap on either side where the two pieces are not going to rattle inside your dado. Did that answer your question, Chris?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
And are you allowing for glue in there too?
Yeah, so there's not, you don't have to allow for glue. The glue is going to naturally find its fit in itself. But again, I don't need a lot of glue to hold something this small together. If I was gluing a much larger project, I would be more concerned about leaving maybe a 1/16 of an inch room for glue on a
in a
much larger
porous wood
project.
like that, Chris, the glue is going to go up the pores.
Exactly. With this softer wood and this porous of wood, oak is the same way. Walnut, a lot of it is somewhat porous, but not nearly as much as pine and oak. Okay.
So at what
Go
point
ahead.
in time would you maybe use mechanical fasteners like nails or,
Dominoes. My favorite fastener is dominoes. So there again, it depends on the, these are all great questions, by the way. Thank you. If I had a 3-foot wide panel and I didn't want this piece to shift at all when I was assembling it, I would have put three dominoes here and 3 dominoes here. I'd use number 5 or number 6 dominoes, 5mm or 6mm dominoes, and that would ensure alignment of my pieces so it wouldn't shift, and it would also allow for a great glue surface on a wider piece. So because this is only 10 inches, and we had such a tight fit on our joinery, we're not worried about mechanical fasteners, but great question, Paul. So it really depends on the width of your piece. Once you start to get any wider than about 18 inches, you need to think about using some mechanical help on the joint. And you think about what stresses the joints are going to be under when you go also. Because this, go ahead.
I'm not familiar with the word domino.
Okay, domino is a festool machine that makes loose tenons. So what they are is basically they're compressed hardwood that has a cutter that makes a oval shape for a loose tenon, and then that it's sort of like a modified biscuit from a biscuit joiner. But
Okay.
it's much more efficient because it allows you to go deeper into the wood and gives you a better holding joint.
Hey,
So,
Doug, how is it
go ahead.
you gave us that answer, and yet at the same time you texted us that a Domino was a pizza place?
Oh, wow.
You did
You
that.
know, I'm on a
Now that was
future
Travis.
No, I
future
think there's some
project.
mischievousness on your end there.
On a future project, I will demo the domino machine that we have available in the shop. Thanks to Dallas and Gary and Travis for purchasing that for us. I will demonstrate that. We actually have probably twice a year, we have a domino workshop. I believe it's $35. Don't quote me on the price, but we have a great guy that comes in, Dana Chapman, comes in and demonstrates for about an hour and a half all of the capabilities of the domino joiner itself. And it's a great course, and it's a great machine to go ahead and do multiple pieces, especially if it's a complex glue up. And you have a lot of parts that are wide that have to be aligned at a certain way. The domino joint is hands down the most useful joint on the market today.
If someone on this Zoom call is a domino owner and knows of a good web page that could help others understand how a domino works and what the pieces are, if you could drop a link into the chat area, that'd be great, because that's the kind of thing we can also include after the fact when we post these things online. The question about a domino is an excellent one. It's an amazing tool, and it would just be neat if we had a good URL for a resource that we could include in the chat that we can post afterwards along with the video.
So Festool themselves has great videos on YouTube. Okay, if you just go to Festool Domino and put it in the search bar on YouTube, they have 3 or 4 great videos on how to use the domino.
Great, thank you.
Yep, another great site is Festool Nirvana. That's where Dallas and I get all of our Festools, because they charge no tax and free shipping, and it saves you about 20%.
Hey, Doug.
Doug, yes.
I'd like to weigh in just for a second on the mechanical fasteners, going back to Paul's original question.
Yes.
For most of us, we will never use a nail. That's probably something we'll never use in furniture. But screws, oftentimes we're using just as a means to, as a clamp while the glue is drying. It provides some advantage later, but the main thing for the screws is a big glue on a big project is to pull the part together and to get the glue dried. But the screw is really not the thing that's holding it after everything's put together. It's the joinery and the adhesive.
Interesting.
Exactly.
Good, thanks.
Yep. Okay, so we have our case done, glued up now. Now we're going to work on the face frame. Oh, turn the right side up, Doug. So we're going to make the face frame around here, 1 inch wide, and this is going to be the inset for the door. So this is going to dress the front of the cabinet up and allow us to have something to mount the door with. Okay, so we're going to make that 1 inch wide as we go around. So I've just, while Dallas was talking about this, fasteners, I went ahead and set the fence to the blade for 1 inch, and we're going to rip out some parts real quick.
I'm wondering if anything is going to fit in this cabinet when it's finished.
That's for you and your spouse to decide.
It's so small.
This, but it's the girl, like the girls say, it's cute.
Okay, you got that. That's true, definitely.
This will be on sale at the gift sale too, by the way.
By the way, Doug, you with this headset and microphone, it's so easy to hear you and talk with you. This is great.
Great. Well, I have to thank my producer for that, because these are his.
That's great.
Particularly with him walking all around, and it also has noise cancellation when he's using the power tools.
It's
Very
great,
nice.
yeah. Maybe you need this for your studio, Dallas, at the shop.
You know, I'm thinking that would be a really handy thing to have.
Absolutely. Boy, that noise cancellation is effective, isn't it?
Works very well.
Okay, so that's about the width of the face frame that we're going to have. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure off our length and our width. So do we want rails or stiles? What do you want the longest part?
Styles?
Rails.
I had a 50-50 chance.
You did. So we want this to be the longest part and our cross pieces to go this way.
Well, the long ones are the styles, though, Doug.
You're right. You're right. I misspoke. So Travis, you are correct.
Oh, I got lucky either way.
Yes. So I'm going to cross cut these to fit inside here.
Hey, Doug, who is your producer?
That will be Big Pup, the
Say it
oldest
again, please.
son.
Oh, your son? Excellent. Hey, thank you to him.
Yep. He gets to eat dinner for free, so it's the least he could do. I'm going to verify these measurements on my board. So this is going to be about 14 and a quarter. How much time we have? 8 minutes till 8 o'clock. Okay, thanks. I knew we would be rushed.
Doug, you're the most punctual of all the different Zoom sessions we have. So at least as one member of your audience, I'm not concerned about 8 o'clock. And you could take a vote if anybody really cares.
Okay. Oh, see, too short. So we'll have to use this for the rails.
Hey, Jim, did you finish your popcorn?
I got most of it down.
Good.
Is the movie about over?
Another 10, 15 minutes.
So does it get a little breezy inside that house, Jim, without that all those open walls?
Yeah, I'm in the middle of a remodel. I saved a couple of 2x4 studs and changed everything else. Actually, I did it last year, so that's just a stock photo of when we
I'm
started.
guessing that.
It's kind of implying that Dallas isn't sitting on a beach.
Oh no,
Yep.
that's just bad. I want to be on the beach.
Doug, why are you using a square joint there rather than a mitered joint?
It gives me a stronger gluing surface, and it's structurally more sound than such a small miter joint.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, this is set enough. I need to get this out of the way. Set this here like this. Set this here like this. And I'm going to measure off my rails. Now, I don't want to just go from the inside. I have to have the full width here because I need that extra material for my half lap joints.
Hey, Doug, did the rails go the full length or did the stiles go the full length? I mean, it's a half lap, so I guess they both do, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
While Doug's making that, I'll just make a note there that you notice Doug, when he's cutting these, did not take measurements. He just marked it from the actual piece, which is much more accurate than using a tape measure on there, then transferring that to the piece.
Yeah.
Marking it in place counts for measuring twice.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. So we don't have enough material for the other rail. So let me knock out a rail real quick. And again, I'm working around all these knots in the wood, but I still have a lot of good material that I could work with around these knots. Hand me a spring clamp from up there, please. The big one. Yeah, that's fine. So I just wanted to bring this up to show you that we have all of our pieces cut for the face frame itself. Okay, so next week, what we're going to do is we are going to create half lap joints on all four of these pieces. So what is a half lap joint? So I'm going to take out this material on each end, and then on the stiles, I'm taking the opposing material. So this would be up and this would be taken away. So they fit on top of each other. And I have a lot of glue surface here, and the rail is not going to rack on me. The frame is not going to rack on me when I get these together.
Hey, Doug,
Questions?
what
Yes.
tool will you be using to cut the half lap area?
So good question. Good question. I am actually going to use the bandsaw to take a lot of this material out.
Okay.
I'll take my little 14-inch bandsaw and take a lot of this material out, and then I'll come in with a 10-inch saw and cut this because I want this flush and a good fit.
Got it.
Okay. Some people say, well, why don't you just use a dado set on a table saw? That takes too long to
Yeah.
set up and dial in.
Yeah.
I could get just as an efficient cut on the bandsaw and leave it about a 1/16 of an inch proud and then trim here. And then I'll come back with my router plane, which we had before, and I will dial in my depth using the router plane.
Yep.
And it will make it even surface all the way across. And that way I could dial in my fit of my gap in between here. So when I do these in the first pass, I want this about a 1/16, 3/32 proud as I do my initial fit. And then I'm going to take whatever my thickness is for the height that doesn't fit, and I'm going to divide that in half and take it off on each part.
Got it.
And that way it'll be a nice flush fit. And we will glue up the face frame next week, as well as do a little contouring on the case here. And then we'll cut out all the parts for the door as we go along. So the door is essentially going to be the same thing as the face frame. We're going to have 2 styles and 2 rails. We're at 2 styles, but we're going to have 3 rails because the door is divided. So we're going to have shiplap siding in the bottom, and we're going to have a veneered panel on the top. So we'll go over the face frame next week. We'll cut out all the parts for the door, and we may even have time to cover how we're going to glue up the veneer panel for the inset. Okay?
Hey, yeah, Doug, in the
Yes.
in your drawing, you don't show what kind of contour you're going to be putting around it. Is it just going to be a chamfer, or?
It's, yeah, just an 1/8-inch chamfer is all we're going to do
Okay.
for the contour. Great
Okay.
questions.
Great.
Any questions on what we did tonight? Okay, if not, folks, thank you again for joining me and my hanging wall cabinet, and we hope to see you all next Wednesday.
This was great, Doug. Thank you
Sounds
very
good.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doug.
Thanks again for attending, guys.
Appreciate it.
Bye now.